typically the way we pay taxes, we pay federal tax, we pay state tax, and then depending where you live, you pay New York City tax if you live in New York City. So we have like the city taxes. So, and then at the same time, if you have own a property, you have a real estate taxes. So what's allowed is when you file your personal tax return on Schedule A, it's called itemized deduction, and you to take the itemized deduction, you file Schedule A. So in that Schedule A, there is a place where you are eligible to deduct state taxes that you paid, city taxes that you paid, and real estate taxes that you paid for your personal residence. We're not talking about investments, it's personal residence. So, and then if you add all of this deduction up, the maximum you're gonna be able with this new law deduct is $40,000. Okay, so that means that it's a deduction. It doesn't mean that the government is gonna give you money back. So, but that's the deduction that reduces your income. In other words, let me give you an example. So let's say your income is 100,000. And then let's say hypothetically you paid 10,000 in state taxes, you paid 10,000 in city taxes, and then you paid 10,000 in real estate taxes. So it's a $30,000. So now this $30,000 will be deducted out of this 100,000 in income, so that the income term comes out to be 70,000, and then you pay taxes from that. In other words, let's say, again, hypothetically speaking, let's say like you're in a 20% tax bracket. So if you're deducting this $30,000, that means that your tax savings is 20%, which is $6,000. So this is what you would be getting back, or if you overpaid. Or if, let's say, if you need to pay, then you're going to be paying less by $6,000. We're talking about the primary residence. If you have an investment property, then it's a completely different game than this whole deduction is taking out of the investment side. So you typically, if it's an investment property, you can deduct absolutely everything. There's no limitations. On investment property, there was never any limitation in terms of the real estate taxes. And another thing now that we're talking about talking about the real estate, there's again the different ways of how you can even look in terms of the investments. Yeah, so if you buy the personal residence, that's another thing that I learned. So I know this concept is very hard to understand, but if you buy the personal residence, it's actually not considered to be investment. I know we all have this American dream. I went through this myself as well. Like, okay, we need to buy the home, this American dream, and we consider this as like the biggest purchase of our financial purchase of our life. And then we invest all the money, doing all the renovations, and then again doing the renovations, and then trying to pay off the mortgage, only just to think, okay, you know, now I'm gonna retire, and I have this house, and the life is going to be free financially. But first of all, it's not considered an investment. Why? Because you're living in this house. So the way I say is that you invest the money in this brick into the walls, but they're not generating income to you. You're not making any money back. So in order for you to make the money back, that you physically actually have to sell this house. When you sell it, then it's going to produce the income when you invest the money. But if you're just living in this house and then you invested all the money in there, it's dead money. There's and another thing that I typically share with my clients, and those of you that guys, you already listen to me all the time a lot. So if it's absolutely necessary, listen, if you do buy the houses, other suggestions I do is do not prepay the mortgage. One of my clients too, he just started working with me last November, he signed up. And then one thing when I realized what he was doing, he was prepaying his mortgage. And when I saw this, I was like, okay, why are you doing this? And obviously his main reason is because he wants to pay off the mortgage, because in his vision and his realities, once he's going to pay off the mortgage, then he's going to be free and he doesn't have to worry about it, which is, yes, you don't need to worry about it, but here's the thing. You still have to pay the real estate tax. You still have to pay the utility, insurance, and all the ongoing expenses. So at the end of the day, by keeping this house, you will never be free. Yes, you will be free from the mortgage, but not from paying all the other bills. That's one of the things. Second of all, why I say not to prepay the mortgage is if you're lucky, if you purchased the house a while ago and then you took the mortgage with the low interest rate, because today the interest rate are very high, 7.5%. But if you were lucky and you were able to take the mortgage rate 4%, 3.5%, 5%, so I consider this being a cheap money. So you already have this mortgage. So you already got this interest rate that's very low. So there is no reason for you to prepay. Why? Because now at least instead of prepaying this mortgage, what you can do is you can use this money to invest somewhere else to make more money. And then that money that you invested, they will help you to pay that mortgage. So let me give you an example. And I'll give you an example with this client that I started working with him last year. So he was prepaying the mortgage. I told him to stop. And he literally was about to make a payment of another 100,000 towards his mortgage. His mortgage was like 600 or 650,000. So I said, instead of prepaying this 100,000 towards the mortgage, what you can do is you can take this 100,000 and buy another property. So that's another asset that you're buying. So in that asset, you're going to rent it out. So yes, of course, you'll take a mortgage, but now it's an investment. So first of all, any property, any real estate typically goes in value. So it's going to go in value. It's going to increase your net worth. So now if this 100,000, you can actually put it into this new project. And now you're going to reduce your mortgage. So you're already making, the mortgage is today 7.5%. So you're already making right away 7.5%. So instead of just covering that mortgage where he was paying 5%, he is already 2.5% plus. This small shifts of being able to shift these things, the way you see finances. I'll give you another example. So again, talking about the retirement. So I have this couple that like really old already, they retired and the house is paid off. But now the challenge is that there is no income. The only income that they have is just the Social Security, Medicare, so basically just the pension. But then the house is paid off. The house is worth $2 million. There's no mortgage on it. And then, yeah, you're living in this beautiful $2 million house. You receive like $3,000-4,000 a month on the pension. And then you just living paycheck to paycheck to pay the bills. You still have to pay the real estate tax, the insurance, and all of that. But then you're not even enjoying the life. Why? Because you have no other money. Instead of paying off the mortgage, but now they cannot even do this because they have no income. You need to do this while you're working and young and you have some income. They could have took the money out of the house. So let's say if they would have taken $1 million out of the house, they would have invested that. Let's say they would earn 10% interest. So that 1 million would generate 100,000 in total income. Let's say half of that they will pay towards the mortgage, but then they still have another 50,000 they can spend, go on vacation, and do whatever that there is that they want.
So would you suggest that they sell that $2 million house or actually take out a home equity loan
Okay, that's great question.
reinvest?
Again, it depends on the situation. Like in their situation, I suggest them to sell the house. There's no need of living in this big house. And majority when I work already with the older people, and they so attached to that for the number of things. Obviously, there's so many memories, there's so many personal attachments. And then, oh, but my grandkids, my family, they're gonna come for the dinner, for that. Yeah, okay, they'll come for the dinner, they'll come for the play day, but it's not like they're gonna be living there. Oh, I'm gonna leave this house to my daughter, to my son, but then I have 3 kids. How are you gonna divide this between 3 kids? So what's gonna happen eventually, when you're gonna die, pass away, the kids, they're not gonna live there because like if you have 3 kids, how they gonna move in there? So what's gonna happen? They just still gonna sell the house. There was actually another person that I was doing an audit last week. The same situation. So she has 2 kids. They don't even live in New York. She lives in New York in Queens, and she has this apartment, but she's holding out to that apartment. There is no mortgage or anything to that, but she's holding out because she wants to leave this apartment to her kids. But then again, you have 2 kids. They don't even live in New York. They don't want to do anything with New York. They're definitely not going to live in Queens. So what's the point of holding to that apartment? You can just sell the apartment, get the money, move yourself to rent an apartment. You can find yourself a beautiful place, enjoy your life, invest the money, generate income, live off this income, and then when you die, you can leave all this money to your children, and they don't even have to sell anything or go through anything. Because like we're only thinking about like the way we see things, but obviously our kids, grandchildren, like they see things differently. And us living in this place doesn't mean that our kids want to live in that place. I'll tell you like from my own experience. I lived in New York in Staten Island, and I had this beautiful house. And then like when I came to this whole concept, for me, I mean like I got it right away because I understand the numbers, so it just made so much sense. It was like mind blowing for me. Obviously, for my husband, it was very hard to understand, and the goal and the idea is to keep the house, to have the family house so the kids can live. But my kids, they couldn't wait to get out of Staten Island. They just were so, like, okay, like when this day will happen just to get out of that Staten Island. So I'll tell you that I sold the house. I mean, I do live in Miami right now, but my daughter, she lives in Manhattan. So instead of actually buying something else, I invest the money. Okay, so I invested 500,000. I earned 12% on that. That's 60,000 a year, and that $60,000 pay her monthly apartment rent. That's it. And we free. I don't need to worry about, and here's another thing, you cannot even buy for that amount of money in Manhattan anything. So we actually, in the beginning, I started looking for apartment for her, and then we started calculating. So the real estate tax, a friend of mine, she lives in the building where we wanted to buy the apartment for her. So she pays $3,000 a month real estate tax. She pays $2,000 a month for maintenance, so that's already $5,000. And then the apartments in Manhattan, you know how much they cost. So like you need to put at least like over $1 million, so plus the mortgage. So there's even no point of buying the apartment, because with the real estate, with the maintenance, which you always have to pay and which will always increase, you're already throwing all this money. So you might as well just rent it out. It's much cheaper to do that. The thing is that this is like this mass production that everyone is brainwashing us and giving us all this information to do certain things, and we all do them the same way. But at the end of the day, it's like it's just designed so they up there on the top make all the money. It's the bank, and the bank is the biggest one. And here's another thing, by the way. It's the banks and the government. They're the ones who is making all the money. And the same thing with the education. Again, listen, I'm all about the education, but obviously there's different levels of education. The student loans. So like when me and my daughter, we had this whole conversation again, like with my youngest one, I did a little bit different. But I'm in a position to invest. I did invest a lot of money in her education, but there were different circumstances. But with my oldest one, when we had this conversation, and we had this honest conversation, okay, is that something just because it's everyone is doing, or is that because it's, there's different, you can go to the state college that cost 10, 20 times less versus going to all this Ivy. So it depends on which education you're getting and what you're trying to do with that. But then all these loans, I see my clients, they already at the retirement age and they're still paying off the loans. Well, if you have equity, well, first of all, what you can do is you can get a home equity line of credit. I mean, that's always a good idea to have that. If you have availability to get that, then definitely get this. And why home equity or line of credit? Because this is just a line of credit. So until you use, you don't have to pay anything. You can be ready for the opportunities, because when opportunities will come in and you have no money, then you cannot take advantage of the opportunities. So by having money available, you don't need to invest right away if you don't have anything that will generate income, because now you have to look at it this way. If you're taking a home equity line of credit and you have to pay back like 7 or 8%, then whenever you invest this money, you have to add this into the calculations and make sure that that income that you will be generating will cover this loan, this interest, and then have some extra money for you. If you have 100,000, okay, and then you're investing to make 20%, and then you're paying home equity 8%, okay, you 12% plus. Or let's say if that's 100,000, you have an opportunity to make 15%. So you're still making 8% if the interest you're paying 8%. So which is a great deal too. So it's always, there's no one size fits. That's the whole point, guys, that I'm trying to say. Because when everything is commercialized, advertised, and given to us, it's a one size fit all. Okay, you know, like David Ramsey, everyone is saying we have to buy the house, we have to pay off the mortgage, and then everyone is doing that. Oh, we're gonna retire like that. But it might work for someone. It might. I'm not saying anything. But for the majority, it might not work, and it all depends on what do you want to have as your lifestyle. Do you want to just stay home and as a retired person and maybe just look after your grandkids? Okay, yeah, that might work. But then if you are very active and you want to retire and you want to go and see the world, then okay, where the money is going to come from if you're going to live in this house? So that's why every approach is different. Yes, I do recommend invest if it's a possibility to pull out the money. The best way to pull out the money is out of the real estate. But then whenever you invest, you just have to see what kind of projects you're investing. So this way you will be able to pay off that line of credit or home equity.